Thank you so much for visiting our YouTube podcast. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Keiichiro Hirano, award-winning novelist who stayed in New York for 2 years, debuted in 1998 with his novel Eclipse, which was recently translated into English. Very difficult and prestigious book, which he received the Akutagawa Award, very prestigious literary award in Japan. So he was a young prodigy. He has published many books in Japan and also overseas. So Hirano, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm very honored to be invited here. And
Thank you. And today we have Miss Sheila Massey, who we interviewed before. But she also saw Mr. Hirano's latest movie, which was released, The Real You.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Which was wonderful. So I invited her to join our conversation.
Yeah.
thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it even more. Thank you.
So let's start with the questions. First question.
Yeah.
Having lived and worked in different countries, including your current stay in New York, how has international exposure influenced your worldwide and creative process?
Yeah. I've been reading foreign literature since I was a teenager, and it has had a huge impact on me. And at first, I became a big fan of Mishima. Yukio Mishima is a Japanese author, and he was not only a great writer but also a great reader. So he introduced many foreign literature and writers such as Balzac, Flaubert, Rimbaud, Baudelaire, Dostoevsky, Thomas Mann, many writers. And so I started to read foreign literatures, and I got fascinated in those literatures. So, and those books made me think beyond the limit of the world where I was born and I grew up. So they introduced me to the people far away in geography or in history and in culture, and somehow those literatures helped me empathize with them. So in that sense, the idea of living abroad has always felt quite natural to me. And so, in fact, I spent a year in Paris for 1 year, about 20 years ago. And it was an irrepressible experience for me. So I've long wanted to live overseas again, this time with my family. And finally, I moved to New York City. I have been here many times, but this is the first time to live here, and the city's vibrant diversity is overwhelming in a good meaning. And as a music lover, I love how easy it is to hear incredible musicians. And just the other day, I went to the Nomad Jazz Festival at Madison Square Park, as you mentioned, to hear Ravi Coltrane. It was really amazing, and his performance, carrying on the spirit of John and Alice Coltrane, reminded me a little of how kabuki families in Japan pass down their stage names. It's very important to convey the spirit to the next generation, not only the form.
Like a family legacy
Yeah.
that they were carrying.
Yeah, true. So I always enjoy editing different cultural elements I didn't have before. So I believe they make my work richer. Yeah.
I find it so interesting that you like American jazz.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true. Yeah, actually, after the World War II, since the end of the World War II, Japanese people have been greatly influenced by the American cultures,
Yeah.
such as rock, jazz, Hollywood movies, and fashions, and even foods, hamburgers or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. You know.
And especially I really like jazz and rock music.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, to me, I was raised listening to jazz in our living room, and I do feel like it's one of our unique contributions to music. It's you either like it or you don't like it, and I think it's just really wonderful how it feels the heart of the music. And
Yeah, I really love music, and I played electric guitar.
oh, really?
And I joined 4 or 5 bands when I was a university student. But I ended up becoming a novelist. But yeah.
I remember in your YouTube broadcast, you said you were brought up in a factory town, but you played piano, and so that
They were picking on.
that
Yeah.
set you apart a little bit as a child to be
True.
doing something artistic.
True, yeah. So
That's,
the ability to play piano wasn't respected in my
yeah.
area because they say, are you rich or something? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you listen to music while you write? Like classic music? Do you have that background music while you are writing the novel?
No, because when I write novels, I like to concentrate the sound of the inside the story, So if I write the scene of the restaurant, I want to hear the sound of glasses or talking something on the next people or something. So the background music disturbed that. But I have a break from time to time, and at that time I listen to music.
I see.
Yeah.
So you are really affected by what we would call oral sounds. Sounds mean a lot to you, I
Yeah,
guess.
I think so. Yeah.
Ask the second question.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Why do you write literature? Do you believe, what do you believe is the use of literature? We often turn to classic works for profound observations of human nature that resonate across ages and places. Do you aim to provide readers a similar comfort or insight as you may have received from Dostoevsky, Thomas Mann, or Rimbaud in your youth?
Yeah, I hope so. Yes. One reason I write novels is simply that it's the thing I'm most suited to. As I mentioned, music has always been important to me, but I didn't have the specific talent to be a musician. But more importantly, I feel literature really saved me. I was very lonely and isolated as a teenager, but I found courage in the beauty and honesty of the great works, and in their depth of thought, in the way they look straight at human contradictions. Yet, how can I say, they never give up on the ideal vision of this world, So I've always wanted to create something that might offer the same feeling to someone else, the readers. And so I truly believe that without literature, living in this world would have felt more difficult and unbearable for me. So that's the reason I write novels.
Yeah. It means a great deal to people to be able to read something that resonates with life in your heart and you know, the reality of being a human being.
Yeah, so when I started to read novels, I was surprised because writers are so honest, you know, about their lives. So they don't write just the very good point of people, but they have a brave to write the ugliness of the human beings and the shameful things. But I thought it's the reality of the human beings, and then we can start to think about the real human being, you know, and how to improve, how to think about it. Yeah. So I really love the honesty of the literature.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage sometimes to
Yeah.
be that honest
Yeah.
about, like you say, the ugly truth,
Yeah.
not just the pretty truth.
True. Yeah. This society is covered with many, how can I say, fake, and but literature should be, I think, honest. Yeah.
I have one question, Yuko, if I may.
Please.
Always Thomas Mann and Baudelaire and Rimbaud get mentioned, but apart from, was it Mishima? Mishima.
Yeah.
Did you find the same truthfulness in Japanese writers, the same direct truth in terms of, because the Japanese people are very polite, as I understand it, and so are they as blunt and truthful, the Japanese writers?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, the writers you mentioned just now, Thomas Mann or Baudelaire, those writers were first introduced to me by Mishima, because Mishima loved those writers, and he was a great critic also, so an essayist about literature. So he beautifully introduced those writers to me, and those writers are not just wrote novels, but also they participate in the society and the politics, you know. So they are struggling with the reality of the society. And I think Mishima was one of the writers like that. But he finally became a ultra-nationalist. And he worshipped the Tenno, Japan's Tenno, the emperor of Japan. So that's really different from me. So I've been trying to understand why he became a nationalist. And I wrote a very, very long, thick book a few years ago. And I spent 23 years to write that.
My goodness.
Wow.
Yeah, so as a novelist, I really respect Mishima and I love his books, but about the political opinion, we have a big difference. So that's the. But for me, it's very curious. You know?
Yeah, that he went what we would call right wing.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, true.
Here.
Yeah, technically he's different from traditional right wing or far right people, but everyone recognizes him as a nationalist.
Nationalist.
I'm reading a book by Yusuna.
And
she,
on Mishima. Yeah.
And she mentions that even though some people think his final act is separate from his work, but she says there was something going on continuously that led to his final decision.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the theme of my book on Mishima, because, you know, literary readers tend to be very liberal and progressive. So most of them can't agree with Mishima's political opinion and action, So they try to separate them. So I love Mishima's literature, but I can't agree with his political opinions. But as Yusuno said, I think they were combined at the bottom. So I wanted to analyze that, and I wanted to write why he became a nationalist in his late days. Yeah.
Okay. Can we go to question number 3?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
I
Sure.
will read this. The individualism.
Yeah.
Individualism. Individualism. I
Is that a
want
universal
to hear
remedy?
this, definitely.
Your philosophical concept, individualism, which we'd like to illustrate, that I will illustrate later in the show. In the pie chart, promises liberation from rigid self-conception and the path to healthier relationship. Do you see this flexible approach to selfhood replacing the fixed monolithic individual as a universal remedy, especially for societies like the US that can be rigid in their own way?
Yeah, it's a very complicated question to answer in English for me, but I tried. My book on individualism, the terminology I invented,
Yes.
hasn't been translated into English yet. So, but there is a short video explaining it
Yes.
on my English website. So if you are interested in it, please check it out.
I saw it.
Really? And
It is good. It's a
really?
good one. Yeah,
Thanks
it's very
so much.
good.
And the concept of the individual might seem obvious to speakers of European languages, English speakers, but in Japan, the notion individual didn't exist before the modern era. So Japanese people didn't know that, and the word comes from the 6th century Latin individuum, and which originally meant
Greek. Something.
Latin, yeah, and it's a translation of the Greek word atomos, So and the original Latin individuum has the only meaning the indivisible, and nothing about a single human being, As Raymond Williams explains in his Keywords, it took the influence of Christianity, biology, and logic for it to gain that meaning, a single man. And modern society was redesigned based on it after the collapse of feudalism. And the Japan in the modern era imported that concept, individual, along with modern law systems and constitutions from Europe. But I've always felt our understanding of individual, very Western concept, was incomplete due to the lack of the knowledge of etymology, of the European languages. Yeah. So, by contrast, individualism sees human beings as divisible into multiple selves, different personalities that emerge in different relationships and contexts. So oneself at work with parents, with one's parents, with a romantic partner, and so on. And each self is not the same. So I suppose you behave differently with your romantic partner or with your colleague or with your parents, and way of talking or the way of feeling or thinking and what you wear or everything. So I call each of these distinct selves a individual. And so person is an aggregate of individuals,
It's not like persona that you are wearing a mask.
No, it's I'm often asked about it, but the persona is originally used by Jung, and it's a meaning of superficial mask, and they are thinking about the central core ego, and in that model, people manipulate several masks to adjust the society, but in that model, there is the core self. So people have to ask to themselves, what is the real self or core? Because in the society, we use several personas, but it is just the superficial masks. So I have to find my true self or something. But in my model, there is no true one self, one ego, but instead of that, we have several individuals linked together, and so the model offers a better way to analyze what we actually experience in daily communication. The proportions of our individuals shift depending on which relations are most important to us, like slices in a pie chart.
Yes.
And some individuals we like, others we dislike. But the key point is that by understanding ourselves in this relational, situational way, we can avoid both total self-denial and the impossible burden of total self-affirmation. Because in Japan, where youth suicide rates are very high, and that's a very serious problem in Japan. And this idea, the individual, has often been used by the NPOs working on suicide prevention.
Really?
Yeah. And it's about the importance of having people, places, and cultures that bring out the selves you like best. So if you have to affirm yourself totally, it's very difficult for someone who are very depressed and lose confidence. And but if you can say, oh, okay, so but you have several selves or personalities, and some of them probably you like, and some of them are very stressful. It's a very understandable and acceptable idea if you are very depressed or damaged from the society.
Even the slice of the pie may be very small.
Yeah.
But if that's the part that, like I say, I like, then it gives hope.
Yeah. So you can avoid committing suicide or something because it's a total denial of yourself. But you have several personalities inside. And another point is that the economist Amartya Sen also emphasized in his book titled Identity and Violence. He is a laureate of the Nobel Prize, Economic Prize. Is that when we regard an individual as an indivisible subject bound to a single value system, it becomes extremely difficult to overcome social divisions, race, religion, nationality. Yet within each person, there exists a complex diversity. And for example, I'm Japanese, Asian, and not a religious person. But I also love literature, love music, movies, and I'm a father raising 2 children, or I'm a man, or I was born in 70s, etc., etc. So in that case, I believe that no matter what position a person holds, it is possible to find some common ground in at least one of those how can I say elements, So, and from there, I believe a conversation begins, you know. So what matters is that such channels of dialogue remain open between oneself and others.
Yeah.
And in trying to overcome divisions, we often seek greater, more unifying values. And I'm by no means cynical about the idea of humanism. In fact, I value it highly. But equally important are the web-link bonds in society that emerge through the diversity of each individual, you know. So I've been talking about this idea in Japan for over 15 years,
Yeah.
and it's been included in middle and high school textbooks now. And some people in the United States are already interested, but I should talk about it with people here from now on.
Mm.
Yeah.
And when they have it in textbooks in Japan,
Mm.
it's to help people socially, like in social classes or social work. Has it been embraced in social work? And like you said, the suicide hotline, where these people, instead of trying to find like a monolithic oneself, they can really recognize that it's so true. Some parts of ourself, you may not, I may not like it, but it is the way you function in society, and so it becomes useful in a societal way sometime to have that mask on.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
even though maybe that's not my best self, but it is a way that I can function day to day in a world that has other people and
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
requirements.
True. So if we are judged by only salary in the society or something, it's really, how can I say, depressing. But you have another aspect in the society as a mother or activist for the saving cats or
Right.
and so you have several points merit
Yeah.
respected by other people. So NGO, NPO people put this concept into practice, and for example, they try to make some place for kids they are isolated from the school or and in that place there are many volunteers from university student to the retired men or and many people. And so when they go there, only that time they can be some visual that they like, even though they don't like the visuals at school or in the family. So that's the practice based on that concept in Japan.
It gives a lot of possibilities.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
way I think of it. It gives you possibilities.
Yeah.
To
You know,
have
these
this
different
one
segments.
safe place
Yeah,
where
yeah,
you feel
yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to encourage someone, we have to prepare the space for them where they can feel ease and they can
Breathe.
be confident of themselves.
Yes,
So
yes.
making a space is very important.
Yeah.
There was a
Fascinating.
best-selling book in America, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, which tell you to divide your roles and make the goal towards your each role. But your individualism is much improved, much ethical. It's more psychological. It's applied in a different level, not the practical.
Yeah, because I'm a novelist, and so I don't like to set the goal, and I don't want to push people to the goals. But I just wanna talk about like and dislike, and so I want to emphasize the importance of the the people or places that you where you can be yourself that you like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have a good friend, you can feel at ease with him or her or with them, and so that relation is very important.
It
you
is.
know.
It
Yeah.
is.
So I don't need this. I don't. So I don't need to set goals
The goal.
or something.
Achievement.
An achievement.
Success.
Yeah. It's really tiresome.
Yeah, it's very tiring. It's very tiring.
It's completely opposite.
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is. It certainly is. Is there a recommended order
Mm.
for new American or other language-speaking readers
Mhm.
to approach your works?
Yeah, it's a very good question because in Japan, I'm recognized as a writer who frequently change the style a lot from one work to the next one. So the 3 novels already translated into English are completely different from each other. So that might be disorientating for readers. But if you are starting, I recommended A Man, A Man first.
Yeah.
It's closely connected to the ideas about identity I just mentioned,
Right.
explained. And then at the end of the matinee,
Yes.
and some scenes are happening in New York City in that novel. And finally, Eclipse, my first novel.
Your
It's-
final
That's
work.
exactly the order that I read.
yeah.
Would it be?
It's the best, I think. Yeah.
Really?
Even in Japan, recent readers, young readers, are born after my my first book publication. So they started with my recent books and then back to my former works, and
Right.
it works for readers.
I
So-
was surprised that I could read his book because I was thinking, Mr. Hirano's book, I won't be able to do it. But after reading 2 books,
Ah, yeah.
Man,
Then you-
and at the end of matinee,
Mm.
I said, even I can read his book.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
So
enjoyed it too.
yeah, in that meaning, the first book, The Eclipse, is a little bit exceptional for among my books. Of course, it's my debut book, so there's a kind of essence of my thought. But to access first to my works, A Man is the best for
Yeah.
the readers here.
All right.
Yeah.
And at the end of the matinee, there was some kind of salvation too, knowing that the future writes the past. I said, it's true.
Yeah. Future changes the past.
It changes the past.
Yeah, because everyone believes that we can change the past, but we can change only the future. And of course, it's a kind of common sense. But if you got new information about your past, your side of the past changes, or why he said so, or something, and
It's true.
yeah, and when you become an adult, your recognition about your childhood or your society changed. So the past isn't so stable, it's very unstable, and so in bad meanings, revisionalists always try to change the historical fact, and they try to insist the innocence of their country or something. But in the personal matters, to overcome the traumatic experience or something, I think it's important to believe that we can change even the past, and the experience in the future or present and future always changing our past. So
That's true.
yeah, we can be free from the traumatic past experience. Yeah.
That's very true.
Because it's always the past that holding us down.
Yeah, true. Yeah. That's the main motivation to write a novel, because many people believe a kind of traumatic theory, and they believe that it's too strong to overcome.
Right.
But life continues, so we have to go ahead. Yeah.
Well, in New York City, there are a lot of psychiatrists, and people commonly go to psychiatrists to address the past and to understand it better. And sometimes it gives you a different reflection because your past kind of shapes the way you process interactions and information. Is psychiatry a big thing in Japan? Do you have a lot of psychiatrists, and do people feel open to
Gradually
going to?
Yeah, gradually people go to the not psychiatrist, but how can I say, the counselors of the mental health, so nowadays it's getting more common in Japan, because depressions are very how can I say, big issue in Japan. Yeah.
There are a lot of suicides.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Right. So, next question.
Yeah.
Writing in the digital age, as a globally recognized author, what do you see as key opportunities and challenges to write in the digital age, especially as AI and new media reshapes art and literature?
Yeah, I sometimes participate in a literary conference in the world, in Asia, in Europe, or some places, and everyone now is talking about that. And it's a common topic. And the third AI boom has had a much bigger impact than earlier ones, on the creative work. And for now, I personally use AI just for research very carefully, because it makes mistakes sometimes. And I don't plan to go further, because the reason is that the joy of writing for me lies in creating the story myself, shaping the style and the structure, and coming up with metaphors, So AI is great for, how can I say, tedious tasks, But the question is whether we want to give it the work we really want to do by ourselves, and the work we most love doing. Yeah. So in literature, the most important thing is to put into words emotions, complexity of society, contradictions, and the ideas that haven't been expressed yet by languages. So large language model, LLM, can't do that. They just recombine what's already being said. Maybe so, but I think the meaning of literature is different. So we have to express very ambiguous, vague things that haven't been said properly with languages. So maybe that will change if AI can experience the world through robotics and senses, like human beings' five senses. But even then, it won't be the same as human beings who shares the world with real likes and dislikes. Yeah, AIs don't have that feeling.
Right. Yeah.
Like, will my mother have a heart?
Yeah.
The protagonist asks
Yeah.
the one who's making the virtual
Oh, yeah.
mother
Right.
She
Yeah.
almost looks like she has heart.
Yeah. So it's true that recently it becomes a problem that young people are addicted in the communication with ChatGPT, and recently it's upgraded, and so now ChatGPT 5 has been released, but it's more how can I say mechanic. So some people missed the ChatGPT 4.0 because it was more human-like. Yeah.
I know a few people who are talking to earlier ChatGPT. I'm lonely, please talk to me.
Yeah. But I think ChatGPT 4 was a little bit too much about it. So I think it's a right way to suppress the humankind replies because some people really believe what ChatGPT says and
to differentiate.
That's
really true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Back to art.
Yeah.
Yeah. As opposed to, like you say, these repetitive tasks that are really helpful with AI. Artistic influences. Are there particular artists, musicians, or pieces of music that have profoundly shaped the way you think about storytelling or identity?
Yeah, I love Chopin, Polish composer and pianist, and I've been written a very, very long novel about Frédéric Chopin and Eugène Delacroix, the French painter, as main characters.
Oh, yeah.
And they were actually very close. And when you read the diary of Delacroix, he wrote a lot about Chopin, and they lived very closely in Paris. And the Delacroix became the director of the funeral of Chopin after his death. So they were very close. And so I love Chopin's music, and I'm a very big fan of Martha Argerich, a pianist from Argentina, and I think she's one of the best pianists in the modern classical music history, and she plays Chopin extremely well. And through her performance, I loved not only Chopin but Ravel, Debussy, and Prokofiev, Beethoven, those composers. And but I love basically all kinds of music, and especially rock and jazz. And I was born in 70s, so when I was a teenager, the heavy metal or those music was really from Led Zeppelin to Metallica, those music were really popular. And so but I love, now I listen to jazz more frequently, and I really love and respect Miles Davis, and he had a very huge influence on me, not just through his music, but also through his, how can I say, his attitude as an artist. He was always progressive and pushing forward, and he accepted diversity and created many very progressive music at that time. And so I even co-wrote a book about Miles Davis with Takao Ogawa, who's a very famous jazz journalist in Japan, and he has a personal contact with Miles, and he wrote many huge books on Miles, and he's my elder friend, and we co-write about Miles.
That is fascinating. I love Miles Davis.
Oh, really? Wow.
I do. I love his music. I have a lot of his CDs. Yeah, he was really brilliant.
Yeah, so my first longing for the life in New York City came from the biography of Miles Davis.
Interesting.
Wow.
Autobiography, yeah.
I guess this biography, these works about Miles, they weren't translated into English, probably.
The book you wrote?
The
no,
one
not
you
yet.
co-wrote with the okay, all right.
But beside my book, Takaoga's book on Miles is really, really great. So I believe it should be translated into English.
Yeah.
Because he's a doctor, and Miles relied on him very much because he had advice about the rehabilitation after Miles had an operation on his hip and legs. And so frequently visited Miles apart, and he recorded the conversation with him. So when I wrote Takao's book about Miles, I found that there is some exaggerations or something on his autobiography written by other writers. You know, it's autobiography, but written by other one. You know, so there was a difference, and Takao collected many testimony about Miles from the many musicians here. So it's a very interesting book.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
It's just very interesting how many jazz musicians knew how to play classical music well and were influenced.
Yeah.
Like one of Miles' piano players, Bill Evans, was influenced by Debussy.
Yeah, sure.
So it's very interesting how that ended up getting translated into to jazz.
Yeah, Miles himself was also influenced by the classical music, and he studied at Juilliard, and influenced by many contemporary classical composers back then. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Wow. I love it. Do you want to do the next one, Yuko?
Yeah.
Slow versus fast reading.
Yeah.
In his new book, How to Read the Book, you mentioned that fast reading is for tomorrow, while slow reading yields value in 5 to 10 years. How often do you personally slow read versus fast read? What reveal the value of slow reading to you? Is slow reading suitable for societies like the U.S., where not too many people read literature? I'm sorry, I'm assuming. Sorry for the U.S. audience.
Yeah, first of all, let me explain why I wrote that book back then. Because when I wrote a book about the value of reading slowly, in Japan, Japan was caught up in the, fast reading boom. You know, there were so many books about the faster reading, and they say faster reading would lead you to success in the society or something. Very stupid things they wrote, but due to that movement, slow readers felt inferior. You know, we can't read fast, and so I strongly disagree with that concept, the fast reading. So I wrote that book because the books I love have always been the ones I read slowly, savoring them, thinking deeply, and catching subtle details. So you can't and you shouldn't speed read Edgar Allan Poe's beautiful poetry or Michel Foucault's difficult philosophy, you know. So, and of course, with the flood of the information today, we have to read quickly some things sometimes, but that's just information processing, you know, not reading. So we also need time to read good books slowly, because it restores our sensibility and trains us to think deeply and keep our critical thinking alive, you know. Without that, it's too easy to fall for fake news or lose the ability to understand someone else's complex circumstances. So for me, making time to read slowly is essential for staying sane
Yeah.
in
Oh.
today's world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is. And it feels like a luxury
yeah,
these
yeah,
days.
yeah.
There's so much information that people end up on their phones and they just buzz through.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, because you just get bombarded with so much information.
yeah.
Recently, I had a friend say to me, my goal is to read one book a month. I haven't read a book in a couple of years because she's, you know, looking
Busy.
at blogs and news and processing information.
Yeah, yeah. But today there are too many information mixed with fake news, and intentionally they are spreading. So we have to keep our critical thinking alive, and for that, reading carefully a book, reading slowly book is very, very important. I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
we
a
could
real pleasure.
miss a lot by fast reading because they even said you don't read. You look as if you are taking a photo of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
page and move and turn the page. But there's no joy in reading that
Not
way.
at all. And,
No.
it's literally impossible. Yeah. So to do that, they have to select the books. They can't understand the Heidegger's philosophy like a photo reading. You know, it's impossible. You know, they can't read William Faulkner in that way. We have to read sentence by sentence and think that deeply about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe if it's something beautiful, then you go back and reread it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so slow because
Yeah.
I'll think, oh, that was great. And I'll go back and reread it again.
True. Yeah. That's a really reading, you know.
Yeah, but it's just like tasting
Yeah.
the food you like
Yeah.
Yes.
to taste.
Yeah.
it is, isn't it? Either you gulp a meal like fast food
True.
or you enjoy a meal.
And you savor.
It's the same. You
Yeah,
savor,
yeah, yeah.
like you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true.
So when we say which of the work of yours do you recommend for slow reading, I guess all.
I wanted
so.
to.
I
I
think-
want to say so, but as I mentioned, please take amount first, and I hope readers enjoy that. And if you like it, please go to the second one at the end of the matinee. Yeah.
I didn't want to turn the page because of your book,
Huh?
because I wanted to stay in the
Oh.
environment of
Thank
the
you.
book.
Yeah. For writers, it's the most important thing to make some mood that
Yes.
readers really
Mhm.
want to stay there.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, and you hate for the book to end.
Yeah.
You never want to get
True.
to the last
Right.
page.
True. Yeah. The books I really loved were the books like that. You know, I don't want to turn the page. I don't want to
Yeah.
finish it.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We've done the question.
Ah, yeah.
Can,
Do we have time for
do we
another
have a little
question?
bit of time? Can we do another question?
Yeah, probably it's not if it's not so
It's an easy
too
one.
difficult.
Number 9 is
Number
looks
9,
pretty good,
please.
doesn't it?
Number 9. will
Yeah,
do.
Yeah.
the audience will enjoy this, but you have to be really honest. Are there aspects of contemporary American society beyond stress and division that you find artistically compelling in a good way and plan to explore further in your writing or art?
Yeah.
Things about society that
Yeah, honestly, I should be observer first because I moved to here just a month ago. So I know that how can I say the reality in this of the society is quite different from when I see outside from the United States. So I start to talk with the people here, and I observing and I'm learning. So I can't judge the society, but there are many inspirations and stimulation of cultures, and people are really there's a diversity of people.
Yeah.
It's the really lacking point in Japan, So I believe that all the experiences, including good and bad, will give me the very something good to write.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So far, I don't have a lot of things to about it. Yeah.
Except maybe the music. I can recommend a good radio station.
Radio station.
Yeah,
a really
true.
good one.
Actually, there are so many good concerts here. So if I try to go all the concerts,
and many of them are free.
Yeah,
So
especially
it's
in the
nice.
summer, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, but the editor in Japan always say that, your deadline is on the Friday or Saturday, so please send your manuscript or something. So I have to keep the balance between listening music and writing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming
Really a
to
pleasure.
Studio 40. And
You're welcome. Yeah, it's my pleasure.